Changqing, en route from Xiakou to Parrot Island at night. A view of Yueyang, sent to Vice Censor-in-Chief Yuan. By the island, the river is calm and the night sky clear. Traveling here in Chu, my thoughts wander back to the past. Above Hankou, birds pass by in the last light of dusk. Lake Changqing in autumn seems to reach the distant sky. From the remote town, it's back to the hills, a bugle in the chill. As we moor for the night among the lonely soldiers on guard. I recall Jiaji wrote earnestly his advice to the Han court. Mourned by all since, he was banished for his heartfelt words. So this is the third and last of Liu Changqing's poem in the heptasyllabic meter. And it's a traveling poem, as you could have seen from the title, which requires some explanation to help you, my listeners, find yourselves. So we already talked that Liu Changqing spent most of his life in the south of China, partly in the area of what had been the old state of Chu, which basically covered the middle course of the Yangtze River. And some of that time he was serving in office. At other periods of that stay in the south, he was expelled from office. He was rusticated, or in a sort of semi-exile. And from the previous poem, we know that he visited the city or the town of Changsha, where Jiaji had lived, which is just to the south of the middle course of the Yangtze River. So in this poem, we get him traveling probably a little bit before his visit to Changsha. So he's going from north to south. The poem says he is en route from Xiakou, stopping at Parrot Island and viewing from afar Yueyang. So there is a confluence, traveling from north to south, as I imagine Liu Changqing was doing. There is a very nice spot for commerce and trade, which is, I believe, a place where a river, I'm not sure if it's the Han River, I don't remember which one, I think it's the Han. The Han River makes a bend and mixes its waters with the Yangtze River. And at this spot, where these two big rivers of the south merge together, 3 towns appeared in the surrounding area. Today, those 3 towns have merged into one, which is called Wuhan, of notorious celebrity because of the coronavirus pandemic. So this poem starts in Xiakou. Xiakou is another name for Hankou, which is one of the 3 towns that later would merge to form Wuhan. The poet is there. He is en route to Parrot Island. So Parrot Island would have been an island not too far south of Xiakou, so pretty close, less than a day's trip. In fact, today the island, has been absorbed by sediments, become part of the mainland, and it's also part of the city of Wuhan. So Liu Changqing is going upstream and going south. He started out in this trip that he mentions in this poem from Xiakou. He spends the night in Parrot Island, and he's probably going in the direction of Yueyang. Now, Yueyang was also an important town where the Yangtze merges with one of the big southern lakes, Lake Changqing, and that area around Yueyang is the real heartland of the old state of Chu. It includes some important rivers nearby, like the Xiang and the Miluo, and it was also a hub of commerce and prosperity at this time. Now, Xiakou and Yueyang, which are the 2 reference points along with Parrot Island that appear in this poem, already had quite an important cultural, literary background at the time of writing this poem. You will remember that we read some poems about the Yellow Crane Tower, which was one of the great towers of the south of the empire. And Yellow Crane Tower was located in Xiakou. In fact, if you remember the poem by Cui Hao, which we read some weeks or months ago, From the top of that tower, of Yellow Crane Tower, Xiakou could see Parrot Island, the island that is being mentioned here. And Yuejiang is also an important town, and it has an important landmark as well, Yuejiang Tower. Again, if you take a look at some of the recordings we made in the previous months, there is one poem by Du Fu, I think it was a pentasyllabic regulated poem, of the views from Yuejiang, which basically included the big Dongting Lake in front of it. So two very important landmarks, Yellow Crane Tower, Parrot Island in a way if you wish, and Yuejiang Tower, bracket this trip of Liu Changqing. None of them are mentioned in the poem though, which makes sense. So he doesn't quite reach Yuejiang in this poem. And well, he doesn't mention any monuments except for the river itself. But interesting how we are traveling through an area full of important landscape monuments and buildings. Out of the three great towers of southern China, two are in this area, as we have just said, the Yellow Crane Tower and the Zhuejiang Tower. There is another King Tang's Pavilion, which doesn't quite make it into this anthology in any poem, but the writer of a prosymmetric text about the King Tang Pavilion does make it here. There was one poem by Wang Bo, an early Tang poet, which you will remember. He wrote a very famous prosymmetric piece about the Prince Tang Pavilion. But okay, enough with the introduction. So this is a traveling poem, and it's also a landscape poem. So Liu Changqing is traveling south, upriver, in the direction of Yuejiang, but he's still in the area of Xiakou or Hankou. The names are interchangeable. He is describing us what he is seeing, what he is hearing, and they're generally sad, melancholy views and sounds, which connect with the unstated purpose of his traveling, which is probably exile. It's not just traveling, it's exile. And this, comes to the fore in the conclusion of the poem, where the connection is again made with Jiaji, as in the previous poem. And remember, Jiaji as a early Western Han courtier who had been banished to the kingdom of Changsha in what was then the remote south of the empire, and which is the same area to which Liu Changqing is going. So let's take a look at the poem as we usually do, couplet by couplet. First couplet. By the island, the river is calm, and the night sky clean. Traveling here in Chu, my thoughts wander back to the past. So as usually happens, the first couplet locates us in time and in space. So it's nighttime. The travelers have probably moored for the night. They have stopped their boat in the river, next to some village, perhaps on Parrot Island or in its whereabouts. It's a peaceful night, it seems. The sky is clear, no clouds, no indication of the season. And the river is calm, so there's this image of night peace, night tranquility. Second couplet clearly locates us geographically. So we are, which island, which river? We're in Chu, so we're in the south of the country. And the thoughts of Liu Changqing bring him to the past. Being in Chu, one would evidently feel a tendency to evoke, to remember the history of this ancient territory. But again, remember, when a scholar official is reminiscing the past, he is more often than not using it as a way of talking about the present, of criticizing the present through some figures or topics or images of the past. Second couplet. So the second couplet continues in the geographical location of the poem. Now we know we're in Chu, but where exactly are we in Chu? You could say the title already gives it away, but second couplet goes a little bit further into this, by also giving us some natural background views or sounds around the area. Above Hankou, birds pass by in the last light of dusk. Lake Dongting in autumn seems to reach the distant sky. So we get two geographical elements that act as anchor points, and that also bracket the place, the space in which Liu Changqing is. And we also get elements of nature, whether it be birds flying or a lake swelling. We get the seasonal indication as well. Also, autumn is clearly mentioned here as referred to Lake Dongting's swelling waters. So two geographical references, Hankou, Lake Dongting. So Hankou is the city that Liu Changqing has just left. He would probably still be able to see it from his mooring site, or at least he could look in the direction of Hankou. And so that would be backwards. He also can look forward, and forward quite a few miles, in fact, from Parrot Island. So I'm not sure he would actually be able to see it from there, and even less at night. But anyway, there's Lake Dongting in front of him. That's the direction he's traveling to. This lake would have been swelled by the autumn rains, and it would have reached its maximum expanse. And seeing it from a distance, it would have been like this vast expanse of water merging with the night sky. So we have these two autumn images. There are birds that are flying past and above Hankou in the last light of dusk. Because we know it's autumn from the fourth line, these probably are migratory birds, and so they echo, they mirror, they act as a correlate for Liu Changqing's own melancholy traveling. He's an exile, like the birds. And it's a sunset, the last light of dusk, the saddest part of the day. In the next line, we get Lake Dongting in autumn. Its water's growing. So, we're clearly located in the saddest season of the year, in the saddest moment of the day, and nature seems to be, showing images of sadness, of despondency, of melancholy. Okay, third couplet. So the third couplet moves on from these geographically located, very specific places to, it zooms into the specific place where Liu Changqing has moored, where his boat has stopped, which is an unnamed village with a background, and we get some of the background of mountains and of certain sounds. And we get oral impressions, especially, of what he is experiencing at night. From the remote town, it's back to the hills, a bugle in the chill, as we moor for the night among the lonely soldiers on guard. So the boat has stopped in some sort of a fort or mini village. There are soldiers guarding there. Maybe there's a fort by the river. Further back, there is a town which is isolated, a remote town in the middle of the hills that act as a background. A sound seems to be coming from that remote town, a bugle. So it's a military sound. It's a type of trumpet that soldiers would have used for the night watches and for military campaigns. So the boat stops. Loneliness. It's the boat is lonely among the soldiers, the lonely soldiers on guard. This loneliness is emphasized by the sound, the single sound coming from a remote village in a background of hills that surrounds everything. So again, the images emphasize, darkness, loneliness, the sad melancholy thoughts and feelings of the scholar official who is in exile. And, in case this was too unspecific, too generic, the poet clinches this feeling of despondency and sadness in the last couplet of the poem with a very adequate historical reference which ties up to the second line, to my thoughts wander back to the past. To what past are Liu Changqing's thoughts wandering to? Well, I recall Yiaji wrote earnestly his advice to the Han court. Mourned by all sins, he was banished for his heartfelt words. The thing that comes to Liu Changqing's mind is Yiaji's president of a courtier who criticized the court and who was exiled. In a way, he is patterning himself, quite obviously, on Yiaji, just as he did in the poem we read 1 or 2 days ago. He feels that he is also a worthy scholar official, sent to exile perhaps because of his words, although, this is a stereotype from what I have read. We have no reason to believe that he was sent to exile or deposed from his position because of any strong statements made by him. Rather, his rises and falls from office depended on the rises and falls of his patrons. But anyway, it's a persona, it's a role that any scholar official not in office likes to adopt. So this is the referent. I'm sad, I'm forlorn, I'm in the south. Sounds that are melancholy, sights that are melancholy surround me. And in this sleepless night, there's also an element of the wakefulness at night trope in this poem. In this sleepless night, I reminisce, I remember Yaji and perhaps other scholar officials who had to endure being out of office. So, yeah, not a bad poem. Quite similar to the previous one, with a slightly different geographical area, but yeah, quite a nice, if a bit conventional poem.